What do we got here? It's from a month ago, chat. But it's about Steve Danuser, so I want to listen to it, okay? It talks about Alex Frasiabi a little bit as well, apparently, so I want to listen to it.
What I want to talk about today is World of Warcraft narrative director Steve Danuser and the news which he has since confirmed that after rumors first started circulating from his conspicuous absence at BlizzCon, we now know that he has left Team 2 and Blizzard as well. His LinkedIn profile having been updated to suggest that his employment with the company, confirmed by himself, ended in November last year.
So he was only full-time narrative director for a year. He only got 12 months, basically. And when it didn't work out, they canned him. Or he left, I guess, after almost 9 years. That's pretty wild, man. That just goes to show that sometimes sticking in your fucking lane and, like, doing what you're good at is, like, what you should do. I said this to one of my coworkers yesterday. I said, you know, back when I first became a supervisor, I realized that I was way better at being a salesperson. Like, I realized that I stepped into a realm that I just wasn't as good at. Right? So I think sometimes that can be the case. But then, you know, who knows, you know, how much choice there really was. And that's what can kind of suck to think about, is like, as we consider in hindsight now, you know, what he was handed to work with. It's not exactly the greatest thing that one could ask for in terms of legacies to be left with. So,
which would make it around the time of BlizzCon. Now, this might seem like strange news for me to want to talk about. After all, thousands of people were just laid off from Activision Blizzard far more recently than this. And
Xbox employees. That's Microsoft as well.
And I certainly don't want to speculate too much or go digging for drama on this, but I think our job as WoW creators is to talk about the game, but also to document the game to some degree too. And the narrative director leaving, especially one whose time in charge of the story was so controversial in so many ways, added to the fact that it kind of slipped under the radar for so long, added to the fact that we are looking at such a bold new direction and focus on story and how it's told with the World Soul Saga, added to the fact that I personally have known that Steve left the company for months and wanted to stay silent out of respect to him and my multiple sources within the company until it was more public knowledge, meaning that yes, actually, I absolutely am going to talk about Steve Danuser leaving the game. Because make no mistake, there will be large parts of the community that will be celebrating this news. Danuser was one of the most maligned and controversial narrative leads. Players will see the end of his leadership as a liberation and a vindication of their criticisms of his work. And honestly, fair enough. If you hated Steve and want to say so, that's absolutely your right and privilege as a consumer of online fantasy content. And this will be the perfect opportunity to do just that as we look back at some of the defining moments of Steve Danuser's WoW career. The burning of Teldrassil. This doesn't happen too much anymore, but there was a point back in Battle for Azeroth where much of the hatred and bile directed towards Steve from the community was connected to the hatred that the community felt for the burning of Teldrassil storyline that opened the expansion. Lots of people hated this as a narrative concept, lots more hated the execution of it and the corner it painted Sylvanas and the Horde into for just about the entire expansion afterwards. And like I say, there was a time when Steve got a lot of that ire directed specifically towards him. So just for the sake of completion here, no, obviously, that's silly. He had nothing to do with the burning of Teldrassil, as a simple look at his old LinkedIn will tell you. When that event was revealed to the public, so it had already been in development for months, God, maybe a year by then, Danuser was a humble quest designer, actually working on Legion quests, that terrible expansion that everyone hates. Steve was made lead narrator.
What? Oh, he's being sarcastic because Legion was fucking fire. I get what he's saying. I get it.
Narrative director after Alex Frasiabi was moved off the team and eventually campus for being a creepy abuser man. So in the grand scheme of Danuser legacy criticism, it should be quite uncontroversial to call this unfair. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, whoa, Tally, is this whole section gonna be a defense of Steve Danuser? Is
So fucking what if it was? So fucking what, dude? I literally talk more shit about that guy than anybody. Like, I publicly fucking vilified that guy. Are you kidding me? And even I defend Steve Danuser. So even if that's what Taliesin wanted to do for fucking 20 minutes, he fucking can. Who cares?
this what I'm watching right now?
Give a shit.
No, it's not. I promise.
Fucking deal with
2,
it.
the Nathanos self-insert. So, you might have heard this. Steve Danuser is a weird Sylvanas fanboy who wrote Nathanos as a self-insert so that he could...
I've never understood that. That is like such a weird fucking baseless take to me, in my opinion. This is like completely fucking baseless. I think. Like, I don't get this. People try to say this dumb shit. You know, people try to say that Steve Danuser's self-insert is the jailer. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. These people have no idea what they're talking about. They don't do a shred of literary analysis. They have no fucking idea. Just shut the fuck up. You know? It's a dumbass speculation.
romance her or whatever. But this is like accepted fact. If you Google his name right now, it will not take you long to find people saying this about him. It being a topic that was repeated in some very successful videos from some much bigger creators than us. So basically any creator. And you must make up your own mind on this, of course, and how true it is. But first I would ask, is making self-inserts even a bad thing? If it is, then I hate to break this to you, but you are gonna fucking hate the new head of WoW's story, Chris Met.
Yeah. Not only that, Dave Kosak has some. Fucking Richard Knack has one. I mean...
Is this even what Steve actually did? This entire thing is mostly based on basically 3 tweets from 2018. One where he stood in front of the Sylvanas statue at Blizzard with the tagline, "The war chief is pretty insistent I get back to work." One where he says, "Day 3, I returned to Orgrimmar to report on my progress. I complimented the war chief on her crimson gaze and asked how my own eyes might achieve a similar glow. I found her reply discomforting." And a tweet from when Wowhead data mined the new Nathanos model in the BFA data, which looks nothing like Danuser, where he said, "It's like looking into a dark mirror."
Well, Dark Mirror is a reference to Nathanos' story, yes, the one that the art was shown for at the beginning of this segment, as he's about to explain. It is a weird thing for Steve to say. It's like looking into a dark mirror. It's like, okay, it's kind of weird. And he looks slightly like Steve in his goatee and facial hair, but besides that, no.
Referencing, of course, the short story Dark Mirror that he wrote detailing how Nathanos got this new body, the body of his cousin. A Dark Mirror, of course, being a magical item which is supposed to reveal to the user secrets and hidden truths. And I mean, I'm just gonna be honest here, this is the flimsiest, most uncharitable, hating for the sake of it bullshit I have ever heard in my entire life.
I totally agree.
Seriously, this self-insert accusation was always bullshit. This was like a man being enthusiastic about story that he was in charge of writing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Taliesin here. It's the guy literally, it's the quest line he was writing. He's been writing the Nathanos thing. He's, you know, I mean, you identify with Sargeras, man. I didn't write Sargeras into WoW, though. Use your brain.
The kind of behavior we say we want, and some of the shit that he's caught for these 3 tweets is absolutely wild and absolutely unfair criticism, but it does lead us into some much trickier areas. 3. Sylvanas.
Oh, here we go.
Steve was not in charge of
This is where it'll actually get bad. Uh-oh.
When BFA was conceptualized and when the burning...
My point is that you don't need to look like who you see yourself in. I still don't think Steve did self-insert. I see. Sorry, I was misunderstanding. I gotta use my brain.
Of Teldrassil and Sylvanas' part in it were decided on and set in motion, but he was in charge soon after that. So, all of the stuff that people hate about BFA, is that his fault? And this is a really tough one to call when you consider the now fairly well documented BFA's history. We've got an entire video that goes into this subject in a lot more detail, but first-hand accounts from inside the team at the time paint a picture of Alex Afrasiabi, the creepy abuser man, being dead set on the Sylvanas villain arc, which he started with Teldrassil and was due to end with her death at some point. This was an idea that wasn't particularly well planned out or popular popular in the team at large. And then, when Afrasiabi was finally thrown out for his creepy abuser shit, the team were not just messed with that huge mess of a plot to sort out in BFA, but were also apparently told by Blizzard leadership that the planned endpoint, Sylvanas' death, was categorically not allowed to happen. She was just considered too valuable to the franchise monetarily. And so now they have this character on the most villain of villain arcs who they weren't allowed to kill. And honestly, if that's true, and it definitely is, then I'm overall pretty sympathetic to the job that the team managed. There's stuff that I really don't like. The fact that BFA ends with us still not knowing who she's working with being the biggest issue in BFA's story, in my opinion, and the lack of context given to her
They should have given it to us right at the end.
In-game during Shadowlands, one of the main narrative problems in that expansion. But there are other things, the Loyalist and Sourfang Rebel Choice quests, the relationship between Sylvanas and Anduin in the Shadowlands cinematics, which I think they did a good job on. And I also think that the ending that they managed to that arc with the trial of Sylvanas and her banishment to the Moor, both in concept and execution, was a way better resolution than they had any right to be given the circumstances. I think
Probably
that's
true.
genuinely good. There's no denying.
Probably true. As much as I don't like how they pulled the Arthas thing with the sword in Kingsmorn, and I think that they should have done better with Sylvanas regarding that, which I think was still achievable given the circumstances, I think that it is a decent outcome for what was set up.
Though, that this whole period is a bleak and not fondly remembered one in WoW lore. Like I say, you must make up your own mind. For this one, I think I'm going to choose to be reasonably charitable and, on the weight of evidence, give Steve the benefit of the doubt and say it probably wasn't his fault. It was a no-win. In rugby, we call it a hospital pass. I'm going to let him off this one, but it does bring up another criticism. 4. Story outside the game. This is one of those criticisms that Danuser is most singled out for. The habit of putting important story not in the game where everyone can see it, but in outside media, mostly novels.
Yep.
This is, of course, something that WoW has always done, and I think the most egregious example is war crimes, where the whole reason and explanation for why...
Bro, it's pretty insane. Like, if you're gonna pick a novel and not read, like, Chronicle, if you, like, want to know what single novel you should read, it's probably this one. Because, like, the entire transition from the end of Mists of Pandaria to Warlords of Draenor is in this book. Like, all of it.
Warlords of Draenor even happened was published
The existence of war crimes is a war crime.
exclusively in those pages. It's wild. It's like if you didn't read that book, then one day you just woke up in game, Garrosh's escaped, we all hate Rathian now, the Dark Portal has just opened, but it's a different color, and orcs from 30 years ago, and also an alternate timeline, were pouring through intent on domination. And I'm sorry, but if WoD's entire existence wasn't dumb enough from a story point of view anyway, to then not even explain it to 90% of players was insane. Now,
and then Warlord's story conclusion was absolutely fucking tragic, dude. It's just so bad. Like, Warlords had so much missed shit, dude. Karabor, Bladespire, Citadel, Shatrath, Raid, fucking Farallon, dude. Ugh, it's tough scenes out here, bro. It's tough scenes out here.
as far as novels go, Danuser's reign never gets this bad. Shadows Rising is actually kind of the perfect pre-expansion novel.
Great book. 100%. He's 100% right. What Taliesin is about to say, I 1,000,000,000% agree with. I've read this book several times, and I actually interviewed Madeline Rue. I actually got to interview the author of this book. It was a long time ago for those who didn't see it. It might still be on my channel somewhere, but I don't know anymore. So yeah, I think this is a good example. Unlike Before the Storm, which did the same fucking thing from Legion to BFA, and talked about Azerite in terms that are never expressed in the game, which is just absolutely fucking stupid. The fact that when Sylvanas holds Azerite, she feels as though she is a goddess of creation and destruction. The fact that that information is not available anywhere other than in a novel is criminal.
important plot it hurts to miss, a fun romp with some characters you like. It's great. The Sylvanas novel, though, not so much. Not only does this book give important context and explanation to in-game events that you otherwise wouldn't know, but also the entire thing came out a year too late. It explains Sylvanas' relationship with the jailer and
Yeah, and it's said that the reason, some people speculate that the reason for which it came out so late is because of rewrites, that they had to change things, and that's why it ended up taking so long. It is also the longest World of Warcraft novel, for those who don't know. The hardcover copy of this book is over 400 pages, which is easily the largest single novel in World of Warcraft's book series. So, it ain't short. It ain't fucking short.
why she follows him a lot better than the game ever manages. Now, I think the why is explained in game 2. I certainly understood her emotional justification. She pretty much just says it to Anduin in those cinematics that I like. The thing that we really miss in game
Those are good
is the
cinematics.
details around how Sylvanas and the jailer met, or like any interaction between them, really. There is none of it in game. It is all in the novel. It's not ideal. I'm going to call that a fail for Danuser,
Yeah.
for sure. But those aren't the only out-of-game media that he worked on. Oh no.
Oh, here we go. Is he about to talk about, like, the Grimoire of the Shadowlands, or, like, the Dragonflight Codex, or, like, exploring Azeroth?
Oh, 5. The Titan's point of view.
Oh my god. Taliesin, you're gonna get lit the fuck up here. I'm gonna grill the fuck out of this guy right now. Because this is not a Steve Danuser thing. If he says that this is Steve Danuser's fault, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind.
You know, this might even go down as Steve's biggest legacy in terms of lore. The recontextualizing of the Chronicle books from omnipotent word of God to an...
That is not what they are, Taliesin. God darn it. You should fucking know better, bro. For how good you allegedly are at analysis, you should know better. That's not what they were ever fucking... That's not what they were ever fucking presented as, bro. Read the preface to Chronicle Volume 1. It is literally Chris Metzen, the creator of the entire franchise, giving you a synopsis of what Chronicle is, and the intentional emphasis on the repeated use of the word history is not fucking accidental. There's a reason why when Steve said, whose perspective would this be from, that when Pyromancer yelled from the crowd, the Titans, he said, yes. It's because I knew, bro. It's not out of nowhere. It's just annoying as fuck, dude. I hate this fucking shit.
An account from the Titan's point of view. People are still outraged by this today. So
And you're not even accurately representing what he said, which also really frustrates me, because Steve said, it's correct, the Titans, and those who serve the Titans. And then he literally goes in the next sentence and says, but there's a lot of other perspectives too, like, you know, the Black Empire was this huge swath of history. Like, this is really disingenuous, dude. This is really disingenuous and dishonest and pisses me off. He's quoting people on the internet. Let him cook. All right. Sorry, chat. It's just like, it makes me so frustrated. The concept. And maybe this isn't Taliesin saying, I just need to let him cook. So before we get all fucking, I'm already bent out of shape about it. Because it just, the concept, it just pisses me off, dude. But whatever.
saying how it invalidates everything in those 3 books as being potentially fallible. And I am sympathetic to that complaint. I genuinely am. You are not wrong if that's your opinion on
Let me hear this
books
again.
as being an account from the Titan's point of view. People are still outraged by this today, saying how it invalidates everything in those 3 books as being potentially fallible. And I am sympathetic to that complaint. I genuinely am. You are not wrong if that's your opinion on Chronicle. Personally, my personal opinion on this is that it's better this way. For me,
Yeah.
it's more interesting to have the account of the Titans'
It is
actions
better.
by their watchers, and indeed just by the historians of Azeroth, be potentially questionable. If not
Yeah.
wrong, then just seen from a certain bias and
Yes, and that's how all history is written. Like, that's why in the fucking preface that the people who all spent the same amount of money on the book that I did, you'd think that they would read and recognize before you even start reading the actual story. Chris Metzen is outwardly trying to express to you that this book is a history. Guys, I'm sorry, but this is not a fucking mystery. It isn't. It's not. If you know what the problem is, I'm gonna say it. I think a lot of people don't read the preface. I think a lot of people don't read it. They don't give a fuck about it. They don't care about the fucking... A lot of people don't give a shit about those initial words from the fucking author. They don't give a shit. They just want to read the fucking thing and move on, okay? You have those little excerpts in books. I can't even remember what they're called. A lot of people don't fucking read those. So when you just start reading and you're not respecting the context to which this is being presented to you as, which is in the fucking book, then, like, I'm not trying to blame the consumer, but to some level, it's like, what the fuck? Like, yes, you bought the book, and if the description on Amazon gave you the impression that it was the canonical retelling or whatever, and then you opened it, and whilst reading it, could not discern that maybe there were some inconsistencies, or that the book is outwardly hinting to you that there are before you begin reading the first chapter, then I don't really know what to say. I don't really know what to say. Like, I don't know how to solve that.
Review. I just find that...
To be fair, I looked on Blizz's website. A description of the first volume is definitive tome of Warcraft history. 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 Yes, dude. Yes, it does say the word history, doesn't it? It does explicitly use the word history, doesn't it? That's good, because in the very fucking start of this, the preface says, "It's been amazing to watch the Warcraft universe grow and take shape over the past 20 years or so. What started out as a relatively simple game setting has become a lasting, vibrant world in its own right, one that is visited daily by millions of players from all around the globe. The world of Azeroth has been shaped by hundreds of craftsmen, designers, artists, and writers since its earliest inception. It is the product of many talented hands and many passionate voices, all bent toward creating a world so rich in detail, theme, and characterization that, well, you'd want to pull on your +6 boots of butt kicking and give your all to defend it. At the core of it all lies a real sense of ... italicized history. The overarching story of Warcraft is a vast intertwining patchwork of myths, legends, and world-shaking events that ultimately contextualize the player's heroic efforts in the ever-expanding world they share. 20 years of storytelling, tens of thousands of moments, characters, races, and monsters, all forming dense strata of concepts and ideas over time. This book, this italicized chronicle, is meant to bring it all together and reinforce the overarching narrative that lies at Warcraft's heart. Writing this was an opportunity to unite the frayed story ends and smooth out the rough edges of this fictional history, and most of this book is doing that, by the way. Ultimately, this grand and super nerdy editorial undertaking gives us an amazing perspective on Warcraft's recurring themes and conflicts, how societies often clash before seeing a common humanity in each other, how earnest, well-intentioned heroes can often succumb to temptations of power, how failing to take responsibility for mistakes of the past can lead to calamity in the present. These are just a few of the motifs that form the common thread of Azeroth's great history, expressed across disparate cultures, factions, and individuals over mythic spans of time. And this is italicized, cycles within cycles. It is from this top-down view that we can more clearly see the dangerous yet glorious horizons ahead. And even in the face of all of this ... italicized history ... I'm fairly certain that the adventure is only beginning. If from that you cannot deduce that this book is a perspective, it is an account of history, and the way in which these words are italicized, if you can't figure that out, it's on you. Maybe this is me being a little bit arrogant, so pardon me. But you really thought that they were going to put out a book that from the first spark of the entire cosmos is a canonical, like what? I'm sorry. I guess I see World of Warcraft's story in such a different way. It's crazy to me that we think that a book would legitimately fully contextualize the mysteries of our cosmos for us. That's crazy to me. I mean, maybe I'm a fucking weirdo, but I feel like WoW's lore and story presentation since its inception has been very hinty and very enigmatic, and some would say that that is a lack of direction, but I have said myriad times that if you go back and play vanilla, that you can realize that the Titans have been acting this way the entire fucking time. And I didn't go into Chronicle and purely from that book develop an idea about the Titans. No. I already had a fucking idea about the Titans. And then when I went into Chronicle, it was just further solidified. And I was like, holy fucking shit. Like, look at this shit. And that's why when people ask me, what book should I get, Pyro? If I should get a WoW book, what should I get? You should get Chronicle is what you should get. I can understand people that didn't see it this way. I took the word history as a fact and didn't think about it further before watching your content. Ben, you should even take history as fact IRL, by the way. I'm sorry. I guess I really am. It's really hard for me to express my confusion and frustration about this situation without making it sound like I'm basically just saying that people aren't reading critically.
Interesting. It gives us fun things like the broker cosmology chart from the Shadowlands Grimoire, which appears to contradict the Chronicle version, but is actually the same chart seen from an opposite viewpoint. We go over that in one of my legit favorite videos that we have ever made. I just like it. And it appears to be the idea that the World Soul Saga is running with too. So it is a legacy that will impact the story for a generation after Steve has now left. I'd actually call that a low-key win for Danuser, but should not be trusted with any story anywhere. And like, okay, like really, who cares if you liked a TV show I think sucks? I've seen Twitter. I've seen you on Twitter. Some of you like some dog shit. Loads of you probably like Lost, and I'm not going to hold that against you, even though you are definitely wrong because Lost sucks. But I don't think you can't write a good story just because you like Lost. I just think lots of people like trash sometimes, and it's not a reflection on their life or their work beyond that. 7 Shadowlands. Just Shadowlands. Okay, so BFA wasn't...
Yeah, so to go back to what Taliesin said, because I kind of like freaked out there for a little bit. It sounds like Taliesin acknowledges and believes that the perspective thing with Chronicle is the better way to do it. But what I'm still not hearing is the admission that perhaps it always was like that. And Steve went out of his way to give us a hint that maybe he shouldn't have. Maybe he just should have kept his mouth shut. Because some of us knew, okay? And so maybe he should have just not said anything at all. Because it doesn't matter, because it goes from one problem to another. It goes from Pyro, you're going against Chronicles, so you're wrong, to, okay, now Pyro, your theory uses Chronicles, so you're wrong. Bro, I want to commit unalive when I hear that type of shit, bro. Drives me insane. You know? It's like, what the fuck? What the fuck? We went from one problem to another. We went from people, sucking so much Chronicle dick that as soon as we're not strictly adhering to Chronicle, the theory's just moot. But now, when we adhere to Chronicle, the theory's moot. Fuck, dude.
Really Steve's fault, according to me. What about the expansion after Shadowlands? People hate the lore in that expansion. I've got to be honest, I don't blame them for that either. There's stuff that I like, as I said before, but the lore in this expansion is a complete mess. No one seems to have a handle on it. I've said before that I think his biggest problem is that the Shadowlands probably shouldn't have been an expansion setting, because you then have to introduce...
Streamers always with a script and a character online are fine, but it's so refreshing to be able to just watch a dude talk about WoW lore and how the lore makes them feel. I'm glad that you guys find entertainment from it. I get so worked up sometimes that I'm like, man, I gotta be miserable to watch. But one thing I think is that I've got a lot words, Taylor. You can do it. I've gotten a lot better about turning it down. You know what I mean? Like coming back from it. Like I feel like I don't escalate quite as quickly anymore, but more so, I feel like I can really like reel it in. You know? So anyway, I am trying to keep working on that because I want you guys to have fun when you watch my stream. Duh. I don't want you guys to be like stressed out, you know? So anyway, yeah.
Way more visual and tonal variety to it than the Shadowlands should have had. Like the Shadowlands, it's grey. There's ghosts in it. Do Revendreth and Maldrax...
Yeah, Yeah, and gosh, I think that if Revendreth and Maldraxxus and things are the way that they are as a result of the influence of the Titans, then that just was not illustrated enough. The fact that the main allusions to the Titans in the Shadowlands come in the form of memories being restored to the Rune Carver is not good. Like, the memory of Aenar and Norganon, like, kind of a big deal that the Primus has memories of those people. And there's also been a discussion that perhaps the Primus is a memory collector, and that some of these memories that we retrieve don't belong to the Rune Carver. That they actually belong to other beings that were stolen from them. And I think that's a fantastic idea, because that really adds a layer of complexity to who the Primus has interacted with, or who he is covering up, who he's interacted with, or who may have interacted with another, like, if the memory of Eonar is actually the Winter Queen's memory and not the Rune Carver's, I think that'd be cool. I think that'd be cool if, like, the Rune Carver basically stole a memory from the Winter Queen that hints at the Winter Queen having met Eonar at one point, which would be crazy considering Eonar's connections with the Dream and Elune and that kind of stuff. Maybe there is something there. How is the Primus really connected with them? Like, how does that really make sense? And that's, so, I don't know, fun stuff to think about.
Nexus and Bastion and Ardenweald look cool and have interesting characters? Yes. Should they have been a part of the very one note, it's just a bit grey with ghosts in Shadowlands? No, it's a conceptual fail, which...
I kind of agree, dude. I agree with Taliesin on this, that, like, it is a conceptual fail in my opinion, dude. Like, I was thinking, like, visually for the Shadowlands, Bastion, it ain't it. Like, it ain't it. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, I guess I was thinking very spectral, very, very wraithy, very, just dark, like, just blood. I mean, there's a lot of it, I guess, like blood and chains, and that's like a thing. Yeah, but like, I guess I was thinking more desolate, more empty, empty. Instead of Bastion having golden plains, how about dead, grayed, not really alive plains? But the thing is that it comes down to anima, that this anima power that's being siphoned from mortal souls has basically allowed them to create things that don't necessarily even belong here. Like, Ardenweald didn't always look like a beautiful blue and purple forest. It didn't always look that way. And we know this because of Rasmius, whatever it's called, that mushroom thing that has the quote, he's been there since before the Winter Queen arrived, and he says something like, oh yeah, just use the network, they said. Don't bother asking Rasmius, they said. Like, oh yeah, go for it. Because basically what he's saying is that there's an ancient mycelium or whatever mushroom network, like hive mind, that connects all of Ardenweald. That's what's being implied, in my opinion. And then the Winter Queen came and she was like, oh, let me do groves and magic trees and all this stuff. And Rasmius is like, or Marasmus, whatever his cult name is, he's like, what the fuck is this shit? It didn't used to be like this till she fucking showed up, started doing all of her shit. So it's like, what did these zones really look like? Well, if I had to guess, Ardenweald probably looked maybe a little bit more like the Drust or something like that, considering the Drust are also invading Ardenweald. So them being more Wiccan, like Wicker, like witchy, occult, like almost like voodoo doll type shit is like, mwah, chef's kiss, dude. The Drust actually conceptually embody death in World of Warcraft. I'm gonna say it, chat, way better than anybody else. There, I said it. I think that they encompass death better than the Jailer and the Lich King and all that stuff. I think better than the Primus and all that. I think that in my mind, when I think of primordial ancient death, the Drust are way closer to that than other things, in my opinion.
I don't think it's down to Steve. I'm fairly certain
Also
that
agreed.
was decided before he took the reins.
I'm pretty sure that this would have been like Dave Kosak, who I think is really high up there in terms of WoW's story development. Obviously, visual art is a huge part of World of Warcraft, so Steve Danuser isn't going to come in and just individually make the choice, even if he was in that position. He's not going to come in and individually make the choice to, like, make each zone a specific way because in his mind, that's what it is. Like, this is a huge team collaborative effort. And I'm sure that there were times where Steve posed a question in like a in like a conference meeting or like a concept meeting or whatever you want to call it. It's all conferences. And there were moments where people were like, I don't know. I don't think we should do that. I don't know if I'd go there with it. Maybe let's look at this option. Like, it's not like these guys like get into these positions and just have like absolute power. Like, what the fuck? Like, one of the zones that I felt like Steve Danuser very clearly had a lot more involvement in was Maldraxxus. There's an interview with Steve Danuser where he talks a lot at length about Maldraxxus and its concepts and inspirations and how the name Maldraxxus even came to be and the Primus and all this stuff. If I had to guess, chat, I'm just going to say it. I could be wrong, but I think Steve Danuser wanted to do the Primus plot that I think most of us would have wanted. Like, the more overt Primus is the guy controlling Zoval, jailer type thing. He turns on us at the end kind of situation. You know, like, he's really been the one doing the thing. Like, I feel like that was a significantly better story option than what they did with making it very, like, it's not even very low key. I mean, it's still, even with the way that they chose to present it in the game, it's still fucking obvious that the Primus is behind it. The guy always disappears at the most convenient times. He's never around when Zoval is around. They're like never in the same fucking place together. It's only happened like one time. It's just like, I don't know. It's just very clear that he's the guy. He's the guy. And kicks us out before we can fight him. Yeah. Maybe it's not too late for them to pull that twist. I don't think it is too late. I just think Shadowlands as a whole expansion would have landed better. And I think one of those things where if you can make the Primus really cool and scary, and then end the expansion with the Primus continuing to exist as a looming threat, actually similarly to what happened with Denathrius, then the possibility and the fear that can start to ensue as a result of speculating about the Primus's return becomes a factor, right? Now we have this looming darkness. Now we have this guy who we know was actually responsible for the Lich King and all that stuff, and who has seemingly manipulated his way through this conflict and is not the good guy. Like, not a good situation. And like I said, the way that they chose to present it in the game, I feel like still leaves the window of opportunity for this open. It's not, the Primus, I think, is still a bad guy. Like, either way, it doesn't matter to me that they didn't overtly say it, but it is the Primus. Like, I think that's like the whole thing about the Shadowlands. It's the Primus.
But, I do think there is stuff you absolutely can blame him for, like the jailer.
Yeah.
Huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, Taliesin's totally right here. I would pretty directly blame Steve Danuser for the jailer. Yeah. And what I want to give the guy the benefit of the doubt and say, like, he wanted the more Primus thing, but I just can't. Like, if we're gonna attribute one major flaw to Steve Danuser, it has to be the jailer. It has to be.
Very boring bad guy. Unsatisfying, unexplored. I don't care if the main focus was intended to be Anduin and Sylvanas. We needed a lot more of an...
They didn't do it right anyway. Again, in my opinion, they should have used Sylvanas' soul fragment taken from her by the power of Frostmourne as the means by which Anduin was being controlled through Kingsmourne, and thus, by Sylvanas finding a little bit of light within herself through the interactions with Anduin Wrynn, who's a little bit of like a spark of hope, that Sylvanas would realize that she had made a grave mistake and thereby would choose to sacrifice herself to save Anduin Wrynn from his fate, not knowing that it was actually her soul fragment being used as a part of his prison mechanism, thereby freeing Anduin, but in doing so, also allowing that other fragment of her soul to come back to her, and through a benevolent act of self-sacrifice, which is the only way that people like Sylvanas get to come back from what they've done, you can start to draw connections and make more sense. Her relationship with Anduin and Varian Wrynn is also relevant in this regard. The fall of Varian Wrynn at the fucking Broken Shore is also relevant, and you have to think Sylvanas feels at least slightly guilty about what happened. Like, It's just a big missed opportunity. The fact that we just went, oh, Arthas, brother, we're gonna get Arthas here, brother. It's like, no, who the fuck came up with that idea? Like, was it Steve? Because god damn it, Steve, what the fuck are we doing here? We got the little lion and we got the Banshee Queen. You have the dichotomy, you have the duality, you have the framework. Do the sacrifice storyline, bro. It's what I wanted even before any of this, because I wanted Sylvanas to sacrifice herself to save her people so that she could become Queen of the Valkyr and help shepherd them to a brighter future. But god damn it, they didn't do that either. What the fuck? It just seemed like such a weird missed opportunity.
Engaging antagonist than this. Zoval absolutely is something Steve would have had creative sway and decisions over. This is a big, big fail for him as far as I'm concerned, as is the mess of Shadowlands lore in general. Now, I'm willing to be quite forgiving with this expansion because, like, I don't know if you remember, there was a...
If it's bad, just don't put it in the game. I mean, they have to make something and put it in the game. The problem is that from the perspective of whoever designed and made this decision is it wasn't bad. They obviously didn't think it was bad. No shit. I mean, I think that there's some times where game developers will they'll admit, they'll say, yeah, we knew it wasn't a good system and we fucking used it anyway. Like, but to think that that they would just think in their mind that something is bad, but then just still put it in anyway because reasons is just like kind of weird to me. Like, why are we assuming these are intelligent people? Like, these are human beings with brains, like many of which maybe even like probably went to school. Like, have you guys looked at like the base requirements for working at Blizzard? Like, yeah, I mean, you know, like they're not dumb people. Like, imagine the shit show that would happen if Blizzard announced a year-long delay on expansion because they don't feel the story is right. I mean, you would have an initial outrage, but if the product that was produced as a result was superior, then I mean, how many times have we had games rushed to us, not just from Blizzard, but from all companies, that we have said, why didn't you just take 3 more months? Why didn't you just take 6 more months? Like, what the fuck? Like, why are we forcing it? Like, make a good product. Like, have you guys seen what Helldivers has done? Helldivers had one of the worst server stability launches I've ever fucking seen, okay? But it still is immensely popular because it's just a fun game. It's just actually a good core product. And some of the jank of it is what makes it charming and fun and enticing to play. But if you just make good games, you know, Helldivers is $40. It wasn't even a full price game. It was a fucking $40. Like, you know, it can be done. It can be done. There was a time when they would have said it'll be ready when it's ready, and everyone would have been okay with it. They did it with TBC, actually. I think the most recent example of that, I feel, is like Diablo 4. Where, like, I feel like they did in just my opinion, they did a pretty good job of not overhyping D4 in terms of, like, they didn't put out trailers until they were ready. They didn't go into it in depth until, like, they were ready. And I'm of the opinion that the base game of Diablo 4 is actually really good. I think I'd give the base game of D4 like a 8.5 out of 10. It's a great game. Anything past level 70 isn't, but the base game's really good. So,
worldwide epidemic, and they were still sorting out the Sylvanas mess. But I do think introducing so much reference and recontextualization to old Warcraft 3 lore was a mistake. You can do it well,
yeah,
but there was
you
so
have to
much
do
of
it right.
And people were always going to hate it. I actually love Arthas's final fate, but I know I'm in the minority there. I am not pissing on your Arthas body pillow, I promise. I think the most damning thing you can say is that you get the feeling Shadowlands is going to be referenced the absolute least out of any past expansion in future installments.
I know. He's probably right, and that's what hurts the most. Because what about Zareth Mortis? And what about that whole thing? Like, I would love to just ask Chris and just be like, Chris, should I be looking at the first ones anymore? Or is this fucking stupid? Like, can you clarify for me? Like, it can't be, because Dragonflight had further references to the first ones. So it's real. And they're called Zareth? Like, as Zareth? Like, come on.
Like, you feel they're just gonna try and ignore most of it.
Same,
I don't know,
Shinzai.
honestly.
I have to see Chronicle Volume 4.
This is a tough one. Dragonflight has come in for some passionate criticism for its writing recently, and plenty of it, I think, is justified. But my main problem when it comes to Dragonflight's writing is on the level of, sometimes I literally just don't like the words that have been written. And
Yeah.
Steve was the narrative lead.
I think that is... It's so funny, dude. I, like, get pissed off at one thing he says, and then I agree with, like, 80% of what he says. What Taliesin said right there is actually so fucking true. It's not the themes. It's not really the events that are the problem. It's the words. It's the words that are being said. It's like, that's where it gets just kind of like, blah, kind of just... People are fine with the family and the friends and the love and the working together. People are fine with that shit, okay? I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is when it's presented as people refer to as kind of Disney style, that's the problem. It's the Calicgos family thing. It's like, yes, Calic, but like, God, Jesus, like, what is this? Is this the end of a Pixar movie? Like, what the fuck? Like, so, you know, I think that's a very fair criticism. And I agree with Taliesin.
On Dragonflight, he pitched the concept of the expansion. Out of every game that we've been talking about here, Dragonflight is the one that from start to finish was his vision. And the buck stops with...
And I would say that the overall narrative and world building of Dragonflight is actually really, really fucking good. Okay? I really like Dragonflight. I think Time Rifts is one of the coolest things that they've ever fucking done. Going back to the Emerald Dream is fucking awesome. Like, the whole Amir Drasil arc is fucking awesome. Azure Span from Anne Stickney is a fucking banger of a fucking zone. Like, Dragonflight's really good. The problem, for me, once again, is just the dialogue. It's just kind of the cringy way that things are said, and the fact that what is portrayed as very violent and really untrusting back in the times of the War of the Dragon Scale, or War of the Scaleborn, pardon me, is how readily, even if initially for the art of deception, the fact that Viranoth is actually willing to, like, forgive and work with Alexstrasza is insane to me. Like, that part is the only thing that kind of just, like, blew my mind. Is like, how in the fuck, after everything that you have gone through, after Alexstrasza promises you that she's not going to abduct dragon eggs, and then in the next fucking section is abducting dragon eggs because she has found a way to justify it in her mind, that Viranoth would ever come back can only have happened because Farak went absolutely fucking off the rocker, dude. If Farak hadn't gone nuts, and if Iridikron had just been there for them a little bit more, and wasn't so enigmatic and secretive, which he always has been and will continue to be, then maybe those things wouldn't have happened. Maybe Farak didn't have to die in the way that he did. But again, and I think he'll still be around because the whole Firelands thing, as we've talked about. But it's like, again, it's like, well, maybe if Iridikron was kind of stoking the flames, and he wanted Farak to do this, which is pretty much kind of the way it seems to me, that, like, he kind of maybe knew or had an inkling of what some of the outcome could be. Do I think Iridikron foresaw the aspects being granted power from Azeroth? No, I don't think he foresaw that. But I think that him understanding that Farak is a danger to pretty much anybody is probably relevant.
With him, Steve will have ultimately okayed every single line in Dragonflight, which I think is clunky or cringe, and he deserves criticism for that, but ultimately, it's not his writing. I generally like the themes and story beats of Dragonflight, which you'd imagine are much more than narrative director's actual job. So I think I like his work on this expansion. Like, great example, okay? The dialogue in the Amirdrasil end cinematic is not good. We all know that. But the thing that's happening here, the aspects getting blessed by Amirdrasil, the actual story, that's cool. That's a good story beat. And if we blame him for the jailer, as we should, then I guess we should probably credit him for the Primal Incarnates and Iridicron, who are great baddies.
Yeah,
generally,
awesome.
I think people really like the side stories in this expansion too.
Same.
And if we can criticize him for badly written quests that he didn't write, which I think we should, then perhaps we should give him credit for good quests that he didn't write as well. And for being a lead that facilitates his team and creates an environment to flourish. I don't know. I feel like we're still a little bit close to this one, and the picture will definitely become clearer in the coming years, like it did.
I agree. I honestly agree. And I've said this before, but I feel kind of bad, you know? I do harbor a little bit of guilt about publicly just going off about this guy, you know? Cuz you never know. You never know. Like if he fucking, you never know, dude, if someone saw it. I mean, how many people saw it? Like, you know? And I hope that my words of frustration, you know, didn't have, you know, negative effects. That's never what I'm attempting to do. You know, I'm never attempting to get someone fired or make someone want to quit or anything like that. So that's why I say that. Because regardless of how much I disliked whatever he worked on or whatever, like it's he's still a person, like who was trying to make something that he thought was cool. and if in his leadership he was able to allow people like Anne Stickney to put together amazing storytelling through things like the Blue Dragonflight questline, then that's great. That's a great thing. But, you know, do those things outweigh the potential negatives, right? And I think that's where a lot of division exists.
Did with BFA and Shadowlands, but I'm going to tentatively say that for now, overall, despite the lost momentum in Act 2 and the lack of overall stakes, something I think will probably seem a bit less like a problem in future expansions when we see Dragonflight as, you know, when Iridicron started everything rolling. I'm going to say that overall, I think his work on Dragonflight is a success. You may disagree.
Agree.
That's fine too.
I agree.
This is all pretty subjective. I think I'm going to finish this analysis of his legacy with this. There's no doubt that Steve Danuser came into the job at probably the most challenging point in WoW's history, story-wise. I think he and the rest of the team absolutely nailed some aspects of that cleanup, badly misfired on others. And I guess I've got a bias because I've always liked Steve on a personal level. I feel like a lot of the attacks made on him were incredibly unfair and personal and not the kind of thing that we should encourage in any community of grown-ups whatsoever. Also, if it's true what I've heard that he wasn't treated very well by Blizzard at the end, I know he doesn't say that, but it's something I've heard, then that also completely sucks because I'm sorry, he deserved better. Because any employee deserves better than to be dicked around by a multinational corporation.
Period. There is nothing to add to that. He is 100% right. As an employee, you should be treated with respect and kindness. And if you're not, you need to be let go. You know? People do not deserve, under any circumstances, to be treated poorly, to be berated, especially in a professional setting, which is what enraged me so deeply about Alex Afrasiabi and these other weird fucks, because I cannot reconcile in my brain how that is allowed to occur in a professional setting. And not only that, but we have seen repeatedly that it's not just a Blizzard thing. It's in media, it's in movies, it's in production, it's in music, it's everywhere where you have people taking advantage of it, trapping people, doing horrible things to them, and hiding it behind the guise of a professional company. And because no one that doesn't work there is going to be able to say or do or prove anything, it just goes unchecked. And it's just absolutely fucking vile, dude. It is vile. The acts that men, and I mean mankind, will commit when they think no one is looking. It's disgusting.
I'm very excited about WoW's new narrative direction under Metzen and Terran Gregory, and the whole concept of the World Soul Saga just presses all my buttons. So I don't know, maybe that's put me in a good mood, but if we are summing up Steve's legacy, I'm going to choose to remember him as the guy who had to do a lot of firefighting over the course of 4 or 5 years, was part of a team that undoubtedly righted the very off-course ship that was World of Warcraft, and helped lay the foundations for hopefully more optimistic times to come. You know,
I mean, Dragonflight got me to come back, didn't it? I mean, when it came out that the new zone was gonna be in the dream, I mean, ordering dragons in the Emerald Dream. Well, I don't mind if I do. I don't mind if I do. The tense and past tense language used about him here was putting me off, so thanks for clarifying that, big man. That's one of the benefits of social media. I graduated high school in '95, and the injustice of middle wage was horrid, as there was no place to call them out on their bullshit. I came back for the Emerald Dream. Yeah. Same. I quit S1 season 1, but I saw the last patch it was gonna be Emerald Dream. I resubbed. Yeah. It didn't quite get me. Just watched your playthroughs instead. The War Within got me hard though. Well, I guess that's true. I didn't come back to World of Warcraft. That's a really good point. It wasn't until we got to watch Free BlizzCon that I actually started playing WoW again. Because it was when Chris came out and then talked about the Titans and the conspiracy and all this stuff. I was like, yeah, that's like part of my legacy now too. So like, I need to be a part of that. Like, this is what I've been doing, like, for a third of my life. So, yeah. Sorry, Pyro, that was meant as an answer to Hi Paul. Oh, that's okay. It's all good.
Now, if WoW recovers,
the hype's fucking real. It is.
During the World Soul Saga, we are going to look back at Dragonflight as being probably the most important expansion in WoW's history. And yeah, obviously that comes from mechanics and instances and things as well, but it was Steve's thing. There's lots that happened under his watch that I think is dumb or bad or actually just kind of offensive, but I can say that about the absolute greats too, so whatever. I'm very glad this is finally all public and all the streamers can stop skirting around it when people bring it up in chat, and we can all finally start looking forwards again, because call me an old softy shill, but I'm really optimistic about what comes next.
Well, I'm gonna link this video for those who are interested. There's a interesting react there, a little interesting one to react to.